My father's voice cut through the phone like a rusted blade. "Lauren, you always have to make everything about you, don't you? That trust fund was family money, not your personal escape fund. Your brother Tyler needed it to stay afloat. If you keep poking around and don't hand over the access codes right now, I'll make sure every single person in this gated community knows exactly what kind of selfish daughter you are." "Hi, my name is Lauren Bennett. I am 28 years old." I was standing on the narrow wooden deck of the little cottage I had rented inside the gated coastal retreat on Hilton Head Island when that call landed. The marsh grass swayed in the late afternoon breeze, and the water beyond the community dock looked deceptively peaceful. I had come here for 1 month of quiet remote work on a coastal conservation project for the small environmental non-profit that employed me. I wanted space to think, to finally check on the modest trust fund my grandmother had set up for me years earlier, and maybe finally put a down payment on a place of my own. I had sent my father one careful message the night before, asking for the login details. I never expected the explosion that followed. I tried to keep my tone even. "Dad, I just want to see the balance. If Tyler is in trouble, we can talk about it like adults." The silence on the other end felt heavier than the humid air. Then his voice dropped into that familiar cutting sarcasm he saved only for me. "Adults. You think paying your own rent makes you an adult. Your brother has real problems. The money is gone because it had to go to real problems. Stop acting like the victim and send me the codes before I have to explain to everyone here how greedy you've become." I ended the call without another word. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone into the marsh. I walked back inside the cottage, the salty breeze doing nothing to cool the heat rising in my chest. My friend, Sophia Morales, who had driven down for the weekend to keep me company while I worked, looked up from her laptop on the faded couch. "Lauren, you look like you saw a ghost." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "My father just told me the trust fund is empty. Apparently Tyler needed it more than I ever will." Sophia closed her laptop. "Tyler, your brother. What kind of trouble?" I had no answer. That was the part that stung the sharpest. They had never once mentioned any problems. My brother had always been the one my father protected, the one who got the benefit of every doubt. I had spent years staying quiet, assuming the trust was still sitting there like a quiet promise from my grandmother. Now it was just gone. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to focus on work emails, but my mind kept circling back to the call. Later that night, after Sophia had gone to bed in the guest room, I logged into the old family banking portal I still had access to from years ago. The trust account showed a big, ugly zero, not a single dollar left. There were outgoing transfers stretching back almost 2 years, small at first, then larger, all of them routed to accounts I didn't recognize. I took screenshots. Then I noticed the activity log had little paperclip icons next to some of the transfers. When I clicked one, a message thread appeared, and then vanished almost immediately. Deleted. I remembered an old trick from a tech-savvy colleague at work. Sometimes deleted bank messages could still be pulled from the cloud backup, if you knew the right sequence. I spent the next 2 hours digging through old logins my mother had once given me for emergencies. What I recovered made my stomach drop. Deleted message screenshots between my brother and my father. Tyler transfer cleared. She won't notice the small ones if you keep her distracted with that beach project. My father, just keep your mouth shut. If she asks, tell her it's for the family. She always buys it. Tyler, she's too busy playing environmental hero down there to check anyway. We're good. My own brother had helped drain the account. They had planned how to keep me in the dark. I felt the first real cliffhanger settle over me like a low tide, pulling sand out from under my feet. What else had they taken? What else had they lied about? I woke Sophia up. She read the screenshots over my shoulder, her face tightening. "Lauren, this isn't just family drama. This is theft. You need a lawyer." I nodded, the bitter taste in my mouth sharp. Of course my own blood would do this. Of course they would make me the villain for noticing. The next morning, I called an attorney, David Klein, who handled family financial disputes in the area. I emailed him the recovered screenshots. He called back within the hour, his voice calm but serious. "These messages are strong evidence of unauthorized transfers, Lauren. The deletions actually work in your favor because they show intent to hide. But if your father is threatening to go public inside the community, we have to move carefully. Places like this gated retreat run on reputation. One rumor can spread faster than the tide." I thanked him and hung up the weight in my chest heavier than before. I had come here for peace. Instead, the walls of this quiet cottage were already closing in. That afternoon, I ran into my neighbour Helen Patterson on the shell path that wound past the community dock. She had always been friendly, waving, asking about my work with the non-profit. Today she stopped a few feet away, her expression tight. "Your father called me this morning," she said quietly. "He told me you were trying to take money that wasn't yours and that you were causing trouble for your brother. I just thought you should know people are already talking." I felt the secondary conflict land like a slap. The social circle I had started to enjoy in this gated place was already shifting against me. I tried to explain, but Helen just gave me a polite, distant nod and kept walking. That night, Sophia and I sat on the deck again. The water looked black under the rising moon. "They're painting me as the greedy one," I said, the sarcasm thick in my voice. "They steal from me and somehow I'm the problem." Sophia squeezed my arm. "You have the screenshots. You can fight this." But the fight was only just starting, and I already felt the ground shifting under my feet. My father's threat hung in the air like humidity before a storm. I had 24 hours before he said he would explain everything to the community board. 24 hours to decide whether to stay quiet or blow the whole thing open. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those deleted messages, the casual way my brother and father had planned to keep me blind. The trust fund was empty. My own family had made sure of it, and now they were ready to make sure everyone else believed I was the thief. The next morning, the salt air felt heavier than usual as I stepped onto the deck with a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. I hadn't slept more than a couple of hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those deleted messages, my brother and my father casually planning how to keep me in the dark, while they drained the account my grandmother had left for me. The trust fund was empty. They had made sure of it, and now my father was ready to make the entire gated community believe I was the one stealing. I spent the first hour of daylight on a video call with my attorney, David Klein. He had already reviewed the recovered screenshots, and his voice stayed measured, even as I paced the small living room. "These messages are solid, Lauren. They show intent to conceal the transfers, but your father's threat to go public changes the timeline. If he starts talking inside the community, the narrative can flip before we get a full forensic look at the accounts. We need to decide fast whether we respond privately or prepare something public." I rubbed my temple, the sarcasm already rising in my chest. Privately, he's already calling my neighbours. Privately went out the window the second he decided I was the problem for noticing the money was gone. David paused. "Then we document everything. Every call, every text, every interaction with neighbours. And we keep pulling those deleted messages. There might be more in the backup logs." After we hung up, I tried to work on my non-profit project reports, but the words blurred. Around 10 o'clock, my phone lit up with my mother's name. I almost didn't answer. Then I did, because part of me still wanted to believe someone in my family might tell the truth. Her voice came through soft and careful, the way it always did when she was about to minimize something big. "Lauren, honey, your father told me about the call yesterday. I think there's been a misunderstanding." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "A misunderstanding? The trust fund is empty, Mum. I saw the transfers. I saw the messages between him and Tyler about keeping me distracted." She sighed, and I could picture her sitting at the kitchen table back home twisting the edge of a dish towel. "Your brother had some trouble with an investment that went bad. Your father was only trying to help him cover the losses so he wouldn't lose everything. We didn't think you would notice the smaller amounts, and by the time it got bigger, well, it was already done. Your father thought it was better not to worry you." The partial truth landed like a second slap. She had known. Not the full extent maybe, but enough. Enough to stay quiet while they siphoned what was supposed to be my safety net. Enough to let my father threaten me now instead of stopping him. "So you knew they were taking money that wasn't theirs," I said, my voice flat. "And you're calling it helping Tyler." "Don't make it sound so ugly," she said, a defensive edge creeping in. "Family helps family. You've always been independent. You have your job, your little place by the water. Tyler needed it more right then." I felt the familiar burn of being dismissed. The same tone she had used my whole life when my needs were inconvenient compared to my brother's. I ended the call before I said something I couldn't take back, my hands shaking again. Sophia came out of the guest room a few minutes later, took one look at my face, and poured me a fresh cup of coffee without asking. "Your mum?" "Yeah." She knew enough to look the other way. Now she's acting like I'm overreacting because I noticed. My friend sat across from me at the small kitchen table. "What are you going to do?" I stared at the recovered screenshots still open on my laptop. David says we document everything, but my father gave me 24 hours before he starts explaining to the community. That clock is almost up. By midday, the shift in the air was obvious. I walked down to the community dock to clear my head and ran into Helen Patterson again, this time with her husband. They both gave me tight smiles and kept walking without stopping to chat the way they usually did. Later, when I checked the private community app, I saw a new thread started by Mark Sullivan, a long-time resident who organised the monthly socials. The title was Vague. Concerned about recent family matters affecting our neighbourhood harmony. The comments were already filling up with vague sympathy for the family going through a rough patch and sideways glances at younger members who don't understand sacrifice. Sophia showed me the thread on her phone. This is how it starts. They don't say your name, but everyone knows who they mean. I felt the social circle tightening around me like the tide coming in. People I had waved to for weeks were suddenly busy. The small sense of belonging I had started to feel in this gated coastal place was already cracking. That afternoon, my father called again. I let it go to voicemail the first time. The second time I answered, because I needed to hear what he would say now that the clock was almost gone. His voice was calmer, which somehow made it worse. "I gave you time to do the right thing, Lauren. You didn't. So now the community is going to hear the truth from me. I told Mark Sullivan and a few others that you're trying to claim money that was already used to keep this family from falling apart. I told them you've always been selfish with what you have. They understand. They have families too." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles ached. "You stole from me, and now you're lying about it to my neighbours." He gave a short, humourless laugh. "Stole. That money was never just yours. It was family money. Your brother needed help. You would have said no if we asked, so we didn't ask. Simple as that. And if you keep pushing, I'll make sure everyone knows you're the one who turned on your own blood over a few dollars." He hung up before I could answer. I sat on the deck for a long time after that, watching the light change on the water. Sophia stayed nearby but didn't push me to talk. The bitter clarity was settling in. My father had chosen his side years ago. My brother had helped him. My mother had known enough to stay silent. And now, the small community I had hoped might be a fresh start was already choosing their version of the story. I opened the messaging app and typed a short note to my brother. I hadn't spoken to him directly in months. I attached one of the deleted message screenshots and sent it with 3 words. "You helped him do this." The read receipt appeared almost immediately. Then the typing dot showed up, disappeared, showed up again. No reply came. That silence felt like another cliffhanger. What was he going to do now that I had proof he was part of it? By evening, David called back with an update. He had been able to recover a few more message threads from the backup. The amounts were larger than I had first seen, and one exchange between my father and my brother made it clear they had planned the transfers over several months, timing them around when they knew I was busy with work deadlines. "Lauren, this strengthens your position legally," David said. "But legally and socially are 2 different things right now. If your father has already spoken to key people in the community, the damage to your reputation here might already be done. You need to decide how far you want to push publicly." I looked out at the darkening marsh. The gated coastal retreat that had felt like a quiet refuge 3 days ago now felt like a place where everyone was watching and waiting to see what I would do. My father had made his move. My mother had chosen her version of the truth. My brother was still silent. I had one clear choice left in front of me: stay quiet and let the rumours harden into the only story people heard, or put the screenshots out in the open and risk the entire community turning on me even harder. Either way, something was about to break. I closed my laptop, the bitter taste in my mouth sharper than the coffee I had forgotten to finish. The trust fund was gone. My family had taken it. And now they were taking the small piece of peace I had tried to build here too. The next morning, I stopped waiting for my father to make the next move. I opened the community app, wrote a short factual post, and attached the clearest deleted message screenshots I had recovered. I kept the language calm. I said the trust fund my grandmother had left for me had been emptied through transfers I never authorized, that I had asked for the login details, and that threats had followed. I did not name anyone. I simply posted the evidence and asked that if anyone had questions, they come to me directly, instead of listening to rumors. The comments started within minutes. Mark Sullivan was the first to reply. "This is exactly the kind of public airing of family business that damages our neighborhood harmony. Some things should stay private." Helen Patterson commented right below him. "I've known the family for years. There are always two sides." A few others liked their comments. No one asked to see the screenshots. No one asked me what had actually happened. By lunchtime, the thread had turned into a pile-on. People I had waved to on the shell paths were now writing that I was creating drama and attacking my own family over money. One person I had never met wrote that young people these days had no respect for sacrifice. My father never commented directly, but 3 separate people tagged him with heart emojis and messages of support. The narrative had already hardened I was the selfish one who had turned on her family. Sophia read the thread over my shoulder and swore under her breath. They didn't even look at the evidence. I closed the app. My hands were steady, but something inside me had gone very quiet. The small belonging I had felt in this gated coastal place was gone. People who had smiled at me for weeks now crossed the path to avoid eye contact. The community board sent a polite but firm private message asking me to keep personal matters off the shared forum for the good of everyone. My father had won the public story without ever having to show proof of anything. That afternoon, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. It was my brother. His voice was low and rough, nothing like the confident tone he usually used around my father. "I saw what you posted." I waited. "I didn't know he was going to threaten you like that," Tyler said. I thought if we just moved the money quietly, it would be fine. He said the trust was never really yours anyway, that Grandma would have wanted it used for real problems. I had debts. Bad ones. From a deal that went south. He said if I didn't help move the transfers, he'd cut me off too. I went along with it. The confession landed without any relief. It only confirmed what the screenshots had already shown. My brother had helped empty the account because he was in trouble and because my father had told him the money was never meant for me in the first place. I didn't raise my voice. "You helped him steal from me and then stayed quiet while he threatened to destroy my name here." "Yeah," he said, and the single word sounded exhausted. "I did. I'm sorry. But it won't change anything. Dad's already told everyone what he needs them to hear. They believe him. They always do." He hung up before I could answer. I sat on the deck for a long time after that. Sophia brought me a glass of water and sat nearby without speaking. The marsh grass moved in the breeze. The water beyond the dock looked the same as it had when I first arrived, calm and endless. Everything else had shifted. By evening, the damage was complete. 2 people who had been friendly cancelled plans we had made to grab coffee. A small consulting contact I had hoped might lead to extra work in the area sent a short email saying they were pausing new projects for now. The gated community that had felt like a possible fresh start had closed ranks around the story my father had planted. I had the evidence. I had the truth. And it had cost me the only place I had tried to build something new. That night, I packed my bags. Sophia helped without asking questions. I called David Klein one last time and told him I was leaving the retreat. He didn't try to talk me into staying and fighting harder. He simply said the legal path was still open if I wanted it later, but that sometimes the cost of winning in court was losing everything else first. I drove out of the gated community at dawn. The guard at the gate waved me through without the usual small talk. I didn't look back in the rearview mirror. In the weeks that followed, I found a smaller apartment farther inland, kept my job with the non-profit, and blocked every number connected to my father, my mother, and my brother. The trust fund was gone. The community I had started to like was gone. The version of me that still hoped blood might eventually mean something had finally let go. There were nights I sat on the floor of the new place and cried until my throat hurt, grieving the family I had wanted, the safety net that had never actually existed, and the quiet life by the water I had lost because I refused to stay silent. Those nights were raw and ugly. I let them happen, then I got up the next morning and kept going. My father still lives in the story he told the community. My brother still gets whatever help my father decides to give. My mother still chooses the version that lets her sleep at night. They remain untouched by any real consequence inside that circle. I lost the place, the connections, and the last thread of the family I used to believe in. But I also lost the weight of pretending their version of loyalty was something I had to keep earning. I stopped waiting for them to choose me. I stopped explaining myself to people who had already decided I was the problem. I stopped carrying guilt for protecting what little was actually mine. Blood does not mean loyalty. It never did in my family. I learned that the hardest way possible, and I will never unlearn it. I can live with the loss. I cannot live with going back to being the person they needed me to be. Quiet, convenient, and easy to take from. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to walk away from people who shared your blood but not your respect, drop your thoughts below. I read what you share.